Hey guys, Noel here, and it is Thursday, and we have a little bit of free time on our hands. I thought it would be fun for us to do a weblog for the Noel ComiX YouTube channel, and one of my favorite topics, professional wrestling, brother. And tonight we're going to talk about the man of the hour, MJF, right here, and his quote-unquote pipe bomb promo, and also the reaction of everyone's, kind of quintessential wrestling journalist, broadcast journalist, as Bobby Heenan liked to characterize it, Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer. So, if you were watching AEW on Wednesday, you probably tuned in because you heard that MJF was going to be talking, and over the weekend, Memorial Day weekend, the Double or Nothing pay-per-view, it was heavily speculated that he wasn't even going to show up because he was angry about various issues. And he ultimately did show up, and he, lost in the way that he was supposed to lose storyline-wise. And everyone was like, well, who knows what's going to happen to him now? And then all of a sudden he shows up on AEW programming and cuts, a promo that I would compare a lot to Brian Pillman's first ECW promo, where he just kind of showed up out of nowhere and just started ranting and raving about all of his grievances in a very charismatic way. A lot of people have compared this to the CM Punk pipe bomb, and I was pretty, excited after I first heard the CM Punk pipe bomb, but it wore a little thin, and I think the more you're exposed to CM Punk, the more he kind of grates on you. And I actually was very lucky to very briefly meet CM Punk, and he was very nice to me in person. I was just in the audience at a WWE show, and this is right when he broke into the WWE CW, and, he kind of gave me a high five with his sweaty taped up hand and said he liked my sign, which, was awesome for me as a fan. But then I've, also just kind of seen him do and say things. I don't know whether he's just living his gimmick or he's delusional or whatever, that, I don't know, whatever. But his pipe bomb promo, a lot of people tend to make a lot of. But, as someone who saw his pipe bomb promo kind of as it was unfolding and then saw MJF's promo, I got to tell you, MJF is, in my opinion, much better on the microphone than CM Punk. And he's very good on the microphone, just comparatively to really any professional wrestler I can think of. When I'm thinking of people who are, good on the mic, I'm thinking, Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hogan, or good guy Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Macho Man Randy Savage, Sting, Ric Flair. These are people who have the gift of gab. Even, the Ultimate Warrior was good on the microphone, even though he rambled incoherently. He was entertaining to listen to, So anyway, so I'm talking a lot about this. I don't really want to get in a lot of trouble for having MJF on in the background in case AEW decides to get saucy. So why don't we take WrestleMania 9, LJN, Hulk Hogan, and wander over to the couch right here, and I'll kind of give you some of my takes on the events here. Hulk can be like my conscience here. Don't set things on fire, brother. All right, good deal, Hulk. I won't. Anyway, so I thought the promo was really good, and I think AEW handled the execution of it, I think, really well too, because they wanted to maintain this idea of, is this a work or is it a shoot? So, after it happened, none of the announcers talked about it. I follow AEW on Instagram, no posts about it. And after they cut his mic, they kind of cut to commercial. So really did a nice job of creating that, is this real or isn't this real aspect of professional wrestling, which is really when professional wrestling in the 1990s was at its best, when you thought to yourself, I know wrestling's not real in the sense that the fights are, undetermined. Everyone knows, the fights are predetermined, but that might not have been scripted, right? So, or maybe that's real, so that was kind of the thing in the 90s that got people watching a lot, like Brian Pillman, or, how, the edginess of the NWO. there was a lot of that in professional wrestling, and the way that AEW handled things of just not even really like addressing it or talking about it or anything, I think does a lot in terms of creating buzz and manufacturing kind of desire and speculation. I've heard some of the quote unquote wrestling journalists talk about a CM Punk ran out at the end of the match, and at the end of the promo, and it's like, well, why didn't they talk about it? So they don't want to talk about it because they don't want this to seem scripted, right? So like that's why they're doing this. Now, in terms of like, is MJF right or wrong about what he's ranting and raving about? Essentially, the gist of his promo was he's the best, most talented wrestler in AEW. He's a homegrown talent. He's underpaid. He's underappreciated, and he wants what he deserves. And he feels like because he's not ex-WWE wrestler, he's not getting the respect or money he deserves. And so therefore he wants to leave AEW, go to WWE, and then, make more money, get more of a reputation, and go and stick it to the people in AEW who didn't appreciate him. And, then maybe down the road, if he feels like coming back to AEW by gracing them with his presence, then he will, get what he deserves because he was an ex-WWE guy. That's kind of the gist of the promo, except it was kind of peppered with, expletives where he keeps screaming, effing fire me, you effing Mark, So, I mean, it was, it was entertaining, and it was one of those things where you could tell that there was like real passion and frustration coming through in the promo. And, with professional wrestling, there's a lot of like method acting and like, tethering the performance to something real inside of you and magnifying that to kind of like entertaining caricature. So like there was a lot of that with, in my opinion, this MJF promo. And, Eric Bischoff, often talks about, like storytelling and edginess, right? And and the unexpected, right? And this had all of those things. And the other thing I should mention in this promo is that he took shots at wrestling fans who like the New Japan Wrestling and the Professional Wrestling Observer. And now I'm going to kind of like shift gears and talk about the reaction of like Dave Meltzer. So, I'm a huge WCW fan. Like I am team WCW, team NWO all the way. I wanted WWF to go out of business. If WWF had gone out of business in the Monday Night War, I wouldn't have shed a tear. I thought that Nitro was better than Raw. I didn't dislike the WWF. I mean, I wouldn't have been happy if they went out of business, but if WCW ended up winning that contest of wills, I would have been happy. I would have been happy if they both went on to peacefully coexist too. But bottom line is WCW, NWO, Dungeon of Doom, Hollywood Hogan, Surfer Sting, Crow Sting. I loved it all, and I watched WCW faithfully till the bitter end. Anyway, so why am I saying this? Because Dave Meltzer hates WCW and and he loves AEW, and, a lot of the stuff that Dave Meltzer would criticize about WCW, I'd be, things like, oh, well, they made WCW seem uncool with the NWO, and that's really what caused WCW to go out of business. It's like, that did not cause WCW to go out of business. Like, I watched WCW, and, like, I understood as an NWO fan that WCW was, like, supposed to be popular, and, like, people cheered WCW and wanted the NWO to get beaten up, and there was never, in my mind, an issue where I was like, I'm going to stop watching WCW because they're a bunch of geeks, and I'm going to turn on to the WWF, because they're like they're more NWO than the NWO. Like, that is not at all why WCW went out of business. WCW went out of business because a lot of wrestlers bolted for WWF because of backstage mismanagement, poor morale, and then creative stalling because the creative people at WCW didn't focus enough on the product at a certain point because, based on my understanding, there's just a lot of backstage corporate politics that occupied the time of creative thinkers like Eric Bischoff, and then just the general ugliness of the wrestling business, and just all kind of exploded in the locker room and killed morale and made a lot of people want to bolt to the competition, which then caused the product to suffer. But then the bottom line is, in addition to all of that, once Ted Turner lost control of his company, he just had no voice anymore, and the powers that be, not Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara, just the faceless suits of AOL, Time Warner, Turner, didn't want wrestling on anymore. And even though it was their highest rated show, they just said, screw it, I don't like the demographic, get the hell out of here. And that was the end of WCW. So that had nothing to do with WCW being uncool because Hall and Nash insulted it. Why did I go on that mini rant? Because Dave Meltzer, I think, got his feelings hurt, and the whole Wrestling Observer got their feelings hurt because AEW, the spiritual successor to WCW, has always been kind of like Meltzer's dream, a professional wrestling company that basically scripts itself based on Meltzer's tastes, because Tony Khan was apparently a Wrestling Observer enthusiast, and has Meltzer's similar sensibilities. And now I think Dave Meltzer is kind of like, oh, finally a wrestling company that I can kind of vicariously book, or it's kind of written for me, And so, the Observer is very pro AEW, and I love AEW, so I don't like WWE. I don't watch WWE anymore. I just watch AEW, Impact, and New Japan when I can catch it, which is sadly not a lot because I have a hard time watching Japanese news feed, streaming feeds, through shady websites or whatever. But anyway, so it's kind of like when MJF gets on AEW, Meltzer's final dream come true, a wrestling company that's creative is written to almost exclusively cater to his newsletter, and MJF gets up there and he's saying screw New Japan fans and screw Meltzer's rating system and screw fancy wrestling that Dave Meltzer's mind kind of gets off on because it's highly choreographed and that tickles something in his thought process, so to that, I think it was kind of like Meltzer felt insulted. And because of that, he started, just kind of saying, oh, well, this episode of AEW wasn't very good. And, MJF, he can't be insulting the product like that. It's not good for the product. That's how WCW went out of business. And then, of course, all the other people on, the Wrestling Observer payroll are kind of echoing the sentiment, saying, well, where's this going creatively? Well, I just don't see where this is going creatively. It's where it's going creatively, and Meltzer is smart enough to understand this, is to generate controversy, ratings, and interest to a product that I think in some people's minds has grown kind of stale. Because it's just been kind of chugging along with Hangman Page, and there's just not as much excitement in AEW as there once was. Now there is. Now everyone's talking about it, and where it can go from there. It just depends on if MJF stays or not, let's talk about if MJF's where it can go. If he stays, then you can make him heavyweight champion and build the company around him. If he leaves, you can use his controversy to generate a lot of ratings and, try to give your talent the rub from him. And so then if he does leave, it's he goes out on a job and other people look good as a result of working with him. That would be the goal, right? But MJF, is he right or wrong when he's talking about, how he's not appreciated? Well, I don't know what's going on backstage, if he's appreciated or not, but, JR, Jim Ross always says it's cash and creative that pisses wrestlers off if the cash and creative isn't going their way. So let's talk about cash and creative, right? MJF apparently wants more money from AEW because, he thinks all these WWE guys that are coming in are making a lot of money off the bat, and MJF is more talented than them, so he should be getting paid more than them. All right, well, here's the deal. When MJF came into AEW, he was a nobody, right? So he got the nobody contract, okay? So he's making a couple $100,000 a year or whatever, which is A lot more than a teacher makes, okay? I would know because I'm a teacher. Anyway, so he's really kind of built himself up and showed that he really isn't a nobody. So, his thing is like, well, I want more money. I'm better than my contract. So Tony Khan apparently went to MJF and said, okay, fine, but you're going to have to sign a contract extension because I'm not just going to give you a pay raise out of nowhere and then, let you just walk out of here into WWE. I'm not a chump, So either take the contract extension and with that your pay raise, or take your existing paycheck and then gut it out. And then when we renegotiate, you can either take my offer, get the hell out of here and take Vince McMahon's offer, but I'm not giving you more money because I'm not a effing idiot, So Tony Khan is completely right not to give MJF money unless he signs a contract extension, which he probably did because he came out and cut that promo or whatever, which was really good. So, if he signs a contract extension and they're doing this kind of worked shoot stuff, which is what wrestling's renaissance was built on, more power to you, because everyone's going to be watching AEW to see what MJF says next, and he's got the chops to keep people entertained. So, yeah, I don't know. So what did I think of MJF's promo? I enjoyed watching it. I'm happy everyone's talking about it. I'm happy there's a lot of interest being generated in AEW. And, will this start making AEW get even more ratings? I have no idea. But the fact of the matter is the show's not boring and more exciting. And it's not that the show was boring before, but it was, I think, kind of lacking in excitement. Now it's exciting. It's got people talking. And we'll just see if this kind of interest that is generated from the confusion of, is this real, is this not real? For lack of a better term, the philosophical term hyper-reality, the prevalence of hyper-reality in, these kind of worked shoot promos what's fake might be real, and it might be more real than real because it's magnified the real to a caricature. That's in service of a market economy. But the spectacle of it is so fascinating that you cannot look away. And that then, I don't know, leads to increased interest in AEW, buzz more, and then that leads to more eyeballs. If nothing else, it's making the product, I think, more interesting, at least to my taste. So in that sense, I think it was successful, and I think that the Wrestling Observer is saying it's not successful or has problems with it because it is a sign that AEW is not basically writing for the dirt sheets as much as they would like to. They're basically trying their hand at something different, and I think that the Observer might feel a little threatened by this move, and that's why they're kind of crapping on this promo and questioning it with such feverish scrutiny. Are you sure you want to do this? Well, what's the end game of this? Like I said, the end game is going to be, generate buzz for the company. And if MJF is going to stick around for a bit, put him in, high-profile programs that draw eyes to the product. That's the end game. And creatively, we'll see where it leads. Till next time, guys, my name is Noel. You take care. Thanks for listening.
And always remember to say your prayers and take your vitamins, brother. Because I'm going to drop that big leg on Yokozuna. And I'll fight Bret Hart if I feel like it, brother. And what you're going to do when the power of Hulkamania and the Noel ComiX YouTube channel run wild on you.